Next up, we have Matt Woelk, game maker and jammer. Matt makes games using sweat and mathematics. Matt Woelk. So let's do presenter view.
This is me as an ent, by the way. No context. There's no more context.
That's just my only question.
That's over there. This is over here. Make that big for you. All right. There you go.
Sweet. Hi, I'm Matt Woelk, and a couple weeks ago, I realized that Unreal Engine 5 doesn't really work on my laptop, and I needed to find something new, and I figured you might all have your own reasons for wondering about Godot, so I figured I've used Unity, I've used Unreal even more, I've used a bunch of proprietary and open source engines, and so I figured I'd come into it raw and see what it was like and give you my first impressions. So the first question is, does it run on my laptop? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely it does. It's super simple and small, and this is not it running on my laptop. This is it running on my cell phone. Literally, you could run it on your cell phone. There's an APK. It's still in early access, and there's a couple bugs or whatever. But I loaded up an example of a touch display, and I loaded up the game. I hit play, and then I could, you could do touch, and it could tell you what's going on, and you can change the code, and it's all there. And in fact, these two circles are so you can put your thumbs down and use them as joysticks to navigate the 3D viewport. Those are only in the mobile one. So anyway, yes, it runs on my laptop. It runs really well, and it runs on my phone as well. No problem there. So I installed it through Steam because Godot, similar to Blender, I don't think it self-updates or has all that kind of stuff. And so Steam just does that for me, which is really nice. And in fact, Blender was doing its thing right there when I took the screenshot. Always up to date. I recommend that. So I loaded up the engine, and there's this tab called Asset Library Projects, and I found this one called Alice, which is basically a Celeste clone. And I loaded that up and started poking around. So here's what it looks like. Pretty nice. I'll give you a tour of the interface. So at the top is how you're looking at things, 2D, 3D, scripting for programming, and then asset library, which is how we got Alice in the first place. Up here is what you're looking at. So this is testing mechanics level we're looking at right now. On the left is the scene view. So that's everything in your scene. We got some blue walls tile set. That's like all the spikes and stuff. And then we'll go over it a little more later. But that's the stuff that makes up the thing you're looking at. If I switch to the 3D view, it's all kind of the same. I've got Matt's cool scene here with a bunch of stuff in the scene view. And it's all pretty straightforward from there. And then there's an inspector, which it's like the properties view in Unreal or the inspector in Unity. And whatever you have selected, so here I have camera 3D, these are all the guts. So everything is a node, and everything can do the things nodes do. And this is specifically a node 3D, so it has like a 3D transform. And more specifically, it's a camera 3D, and so it has projection can be perspective or isometric. You can change the near field planes and whatever Doppler tracking is. That sounds fun. Haven't played with that yet. So the properties you have are visible here. And so we'll talk about what a scene is. So everything is nodes. There's no components and game objects. It's just a node. And then a scene is basically a prefab. So here our level is a scene. So our level is called testing mechanics level. It has some tiles in it. It has our player Alice. It has some respawn points. Matt's cool editor tool. We'll talk about that later. It's all a scene. So here we have Matt's cool scene, and that's saved to disk down there, Matt's cool scene, and then underneath you have Alice. And they both have the extension TSCN, which just means scene. And so your camera is everything's a node, and you can group them together in scenes, which are like prefabs. And the game doesn't care if your scene is a level or if it's a player or if it's just a bunch of cool stuff you thought looked nice together. It's all treated the same. So you can put a level in a level, you can put a character on a character, you can do whatever you want, and it doesn't distinguish between that, which is pretty interesting. And then if you want to make a new scene, which is like a prefab, you can just right-click, like say these tiles, I'm really proud of this layout, I can right-click and say Save Branch as Scene, and now it goes in my file system and I can put it in other levels or put it on players or whatever I want. You can mix and match it however you like. Another thing you might want to know about, there's this import tab beside scene. So down here I selected Death Strip 7, which sounds like a horror game. So let's make it look like a horror game. So I took the compression, made it lossy, and cranked the quality down to 7%. And ooh boy, JPEG artifacts. Now we're making a horror game. So we'll talk about scripting now. These are a bunch of scripts. They end with GD because GD script is the default programming language. And if you've used Python, you'll be comfortable pretty much immediately. If you haven't used Python, but you're familiar with C#, you can use C# and you can get the special version of Godot that lets you do .NET and whatever. Or you can learn GD script, and you can use the official documentation basically as a Rosetta Stone, because there's a tab for GD script and there's a tab for C#. So if you know how to do it in C#, find the example and you can flip back and forth and you'll catch on really fast. If you want to expose something to the nice inspector, all you do is put export in front of it. So here I've got a Boolean, so that shows up as a checkbox. I've got a node, so that is a node that you can like drag a node from your scene in there to link things up Unity style. If you make it a range, it's got a slider. We got a multi-line text. We got an easing. This one shows you like a little graphic of what the easing kind of predicts you would want to see. And then color gives you a nice color picker. And that's just one line, and then it shows up here. I haven't found one for doing curve editing the way Unity does yet, but probably there's a plugin or something. We'll find it. One other nice thing about GDScript is it hot reloads. So here I've got, I'm in my process function, which is like update in Unity or tick in Unreal. It runs on every frame. And this is the running game, and I'm rotating it on the y-axis, which is up, Unity style. And I can change that from 0.01 to 0.1, and the game is still running, and now my cube is spinning faster. So it live loads, and I wish every engine had that feature. One thing I like to do whenever I start a project is when I hit escape, I want the game to quit, because that'll help me iterate faster. And so this is how I did it. In project settings, there's something called the input map, which should be familiar if you've used Unreal Engine or a certain Unity plugin. And so you make game actions that you hook up to inputs. So here I made one called escape, and it's hooked up to the escape key. Very clever name. And so here in my process function, I'm just looking for the escape action to have just been finished, and then I quit. And that's the whole thing. And this top line isn't even really required. That's just me being clean. Types in GDScript are not necessary, but they're very nice, because then you get autocomplete. They look like this, Python style, optional types. Here is an example of something I like doing in Unreal Engine. There's a delay node, so you can say, like, run the function this far and then wait for either an amount of time or wait for something to happen and then continue running that function, kind of like coroutines in Unity. And so this is kind of the equivalent in GDScript. You can await a timer's timeout, or you can await a button's action. And this is a really nice way to set up your like broad logic in a jam. This is actually what Graham did on Words with Foes Quest for the Lexicomicon, where you basically have a function that runs until it gets to the state it wants, and then it waits for like player inputs and stuff, and then it kicks off where it was, and now you're in the second state. So the last one would be like the credits scene, the first one would be the main menu, things like that. If you want to make a tool that runs in the editor, you put the tool tag in the top, and that's it. Now your process function runs in the editor and not just when the game's running, and that's it. This is the world environment, and if you want to make one, so you want it to look like this when your game is running, there's these sneaky little buttons, and you can configure it. You say, I want the sun to be here, I want the ground to be this color. You hit go, and then it puts the world environment in the scene, and now you have it here. Pretty simple. One thing impressed me a lot is the Blender integration specifically. You go on your settings and you say Blender lives here, and then you can drag in a .blend file. You don't have to convert it to FBX or whatever. And I can stretch out the monkey's ears, hit save, tab back over. It knows I changed the file, and it loads it straight into the scene, and I can see it in my level. Oh, it would have saved me so much time. Another nice thing, so there's a VS Code integration both ways. There's a plugin for VS Code, and then on the engine, you can say my default editor is VS Code if you don't want to use the built-in one. So autocomplete works perfectly, and it's all integrated and stuff. One nice thing about that is you can do a full text search on your whole project. So as I'm poking around Alice, I found this function on hurtbox area entered, and I don't know what it does. What's calling this? Why does this exist? Is it dead code? So I searched the whole project, and in my Alice scene file, there's something called a signal, and it's going from a hurtbox. And that was enough information that I could go in and click on Alice and go to the hurtbox. And then in this node tab, you can see the connections, and there it is. Boom, that's where it's hooked up. So really nice to have like the scene file be like ridiculously human readable. Like there's no magic in here. There's like, if I scroll up, you'll see a UID once or something. So you can text search your whole project, and that was very impressive to me. So we got it running on my laptop. Can we make it look good? Maybe not Unreal Engine good, but can it look good? Here's it as like unlit with some emissive textures. And then I hit this button called SDF GI. GI is for global illumination. SDF, I could talk your ear off if you want. It's great. Hit that button, and now you have like a bit of bounce lighting happening. And that's fun, but I want to do a post-processing shader. I'm feeling fancy. Can we dither the whole scene? I want my pixels to be 1 or 0, nothing in between. So I found a little example. You add these two nodes, put a little GLSL shader in there, and then you got it. Huh? Pretty? It's not. It's not. There's no. You want to play this game. I know you do. You don't want to play this game. But I could do it, and it was easy enough that I felt confident, and it's a standard language, GLSL. So that was pretty good. Okay, verdict. Is this a good is this a good engine to jam with? Am I going to use this engine in the future? Jam ready, baby. I think it's good. Now, I should warn you, I tried a different global illumination strategy, and it froze things, and I had to, like, it wouldn't load my level anymore, so I had to load it in text editor and delete that node. But I could do that. Like, it was human readable text. I could go in and say, that was the problem. I'll just delete that, and it loads up. So, well, a little rough around the edges, but like searchable enough that you can find your way. And that's what I think. Thanks so much.